The invitations were elegant, cream-colored with delicate gold lettering. Sarah and Tom. Their names seemed to dance across the thick paper, promising a day of fairy tale romance and lasting happiness. Everyone in the small town of Havenwood knew Sarah. Sweet, kind, and with a smile that could melt glaciers. Tom, a successful architect, had swept her off her feet. He was charming, handsome, and seemed genuinely devoted to Sarah. But behind the picture-perfect facade, a storm was brewing. Emily, Sarah's mother, was the picture of grace and sophistication. She'd poured her heart and soul into planning the wedding, ensuring every detail was perfect for her only daughter. Yet, beneath her composed exterior, Emily harbored a secret, a dangerous infatuation with Tom that had blossomed into a full-blown affair. The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Sarah, surrounded by her bridesmaids, buzzed with nervous excitement. Emily, flitting around, made sure everything was running smoothly. The church bells chimed, a joyful sound that echoed through the town square. As Sarah walked down the aisle, radiant in her white gown, her eyes met Tom's. His smile was dazzling, but something flickered in his eyes, a fleeting moment of guilt or perhaps something else entirely. Emily watched from the front row, a forced smile plastered on her face. As the vows were exchanged, a wave of nausea washed over her. She knew this was wrong, terribly wrong. But the desire, the forbidden thrill of her secret affair, was a powerful force she couldn't seem to control. The reception was held at the Havenwood Country Club. Laughter and music filled the air as guests celebrated the happy couple. Little did they know, the fairy tale was about to shatter. While the reception buzzed with merriment, a keen observer might have noticed subtle clues, hints of the simmering tension beneath the surface. During the toast, when Tom raised his glass to Sarah, his eyes lingered on Emily for just a fraction of a second too long. It was barely perceptible, but it was there. A knowing glance passed between them, a silent language that spoke volumes. Later, as the band played a slow song, Tom approached Emily for a dance. Sarah was busy chatting with her bridesmaids, oblivious to the scene unfolding before her. Tom took Emily's hand, and as they swayed to the music, their bodies pressed a little too close. Their conversation was hushed, their smiles secretive. An aunt, Mildred, watched them with a raised eyebrow, a flicker of suspicion in her eyes. Even the photographer, capturing candid moments of the celebration, noticed something unusual. In one photo, Tom's hand rested a little too intimately on Emily's back as they posed for a group shot. In another, Emily's gaze followed Tom across the room with an intensity that seemed out of place for a mother looking at her daughter's new husband. Sarah, caught up in the whirlwind of her wedding day, remained blissfully unaware. She laughed with her friends, danced with her father, and basked in the glow of what she believed was true love. Yet, the seeds of doubt were being sown, almost imperceptibly, around her. Small details, fleeting moments, whispers in the air. They were like pieces of a puzzle, waiting to be assembled, revealing a picture far more sinister than anyone could have imagined on this joyous day. The undercurrent of something amiss was subtle, but those who were paying close attention could feel it. It was the calm before the storm, the quiet before the explosion that would shatter everything. The shattering of Sarah's world came not during the reception, but later that night. Exhausted from the celebrations, she and Tom had retreated to their honeymoon suite at a nearby luxury hotel. Tom, claiming a headache, went to take a shower, leaving Sarah alone with her phone. As she scrolled through her notifications, a message popped up on Tom's phone, which he had left charging on the bedside table. It was from Emily. Curiosity, a dangerous and irresistible force, compelled Sarah to unlock the phone. The message was simple, yet devastating. Can't stop thinking about last night. Meet me tomorrow. Sarah's heart plummeted. Her breath hitched in her throat. She scrolled through the message history, each text a dagger twisting in her heart. There were weeks, months of secret rendezvous, stolen moments, and whispered promises. Emily and Tom had been carrying on their affair right under her nose. Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she read the words. each one a betrayal. The man she loved, the mother she trusted, had both deceived her in the most unimaginable way. The fairy tale wedding, the promise of a happy future, all crumbled before her eyes. The pain was unbearable, a gaping hole tearing through her soul. When Tom emerged from the shower, Sarah confronted him, phone in hand, the incriminating messages displayed on the screen. The blood drained from his face as he realized he had been caught. He stammered, trying to deny it, but the evidence was irrefutable. Sarah's screams echoed through the hotel suite, a sound of pure agony and disbelief. The dream was over. The nightmare had begun. News of Sarah's discovery spread like wildfire through Havenwood. The joyous wedding celebration had become a twisted scandal, the whispers and rumors growing louder with each passing day. Despite the late hour and the raw emotions, Sarah, fueled by a potent mix of anger and grief, decided she couldn't wait. She needed answers, an explanation, even if it was a lie. She drove back to her parents' house, the place she had always considered her safe haven, now tainted by betrayal. The lights were still on. She burst through the front door, finding Emily sitting in the living room, seemingly unfazed. "How could you?" Sarah screamed, her voice raw with emotion. "With Tom? My Tom? My wedding day?" Emily's composure finally cracked. Tears welled up in her eyes, but there was also a defiant glint in her gaze. "It just happened," she said weakly. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Tom arrived moments later, drawn by the commotion. He tried to intervene, but Sarah wouldn't let him near her. "You both disgust me," she spat, her voice filled with venom. "I never want to see either of you again." The confrontation escalated, voices rising in a cacophony of accusations and denials. Sarah ripped off her wedding ring and threw it at Tom's feet. She declared the wedding was off and that she would never forgive them. The neighbors, drawn by the noise, peeked through their curtains, witnessing the unraveling of a family, a community, and a dream. The joyous occasion had transformed into a public spectacle of heartbreak and betrayal. The reception may have been over, but the real drama was just beginning. In the days that followed, Havenwood became a town divided. Sarah, heartbroken and humiliated, retreated into herself, seeking solace in the few friends she still trusted. She couldn't bear to stay in the family home, haunted by memories of her mother's betrayal. She moved into a small apartment on the other side of town, trying to rebuild her life from the ashes of her shattered dreams. Emily and Tom, now out in the open, faced the full force of the community's condemnation. They were ostracized, whispered about in grocery stores, and openly scorned at social gatherings. Old friends turned their backs, and family members refused to speak to them. The weight of their actions pressed down on them, isolating them in a bubble of shame. Tom lost his job at the architecture firm, his reputation tarnished beyond repair. Emily, once a respected member of the community, found herself a pariah. Their relationship, born out of deceit and lust, began to crumble under the pressure. The initial excitement of their forbidden love faded, replaced by resentment and guilt. Sarah, meanwhile, struggled to cope with the emotional fallout. She attended therapy, trying to understand how she could have been so blind, so trusting. The pain of betrayal ran deep, leaving scars that would likely never fully heal. She vowed to move on, to build a new life for herself, free from the toxic influence of her mother and her former fiancé. But the shadow of the wedding day, the day her world imploded, would forever linger in her mind. The small town of Havenwood would never be the same. The scandal had changed everything, leaving a permanent stain on their lives. Despite the community's disapproval, Emily and Tom remained together, clinging to the wreckage of their lives. They moved into a small, run-down apartment on the outskirts of Havenwood, a far cry from the life they had envisioned. Tom struggled to find work, his reputation preceding him. Emily took a job as a waitress at a local diner, enduring the judgmental stares and hushed whispers of the patrons. Their relationship, once fueled by forbidden passion, quickly soured. The financial strain, coupled with the constant judgment from the community, created a toxic environment. They argued constantly, each blaming the other for their misfortunes. The guilt of their betrayal weighed heavily on them, poisoning their every interaction. Tom began to drink heavily, seeking solace in the bottom of a bottle. Emily, resentful and bitter, accused him of ruining her life. The love they once shared had transformed into a bitter cocktail of resentment and regret. They were trapped in a cycle of recrimination and despair, their future bleak and uncertain. The small apartment became a battleground, the walls echoing with their angry shouts and bitter accusations. The passion that had ignited their affair had long since burned out, leaving behind only ashes and a smoldering resentment. They were isolated and alone, haunted by the ghosts of their past, and facing a future filled with nothing but regret. The secret they shared had become a prison, trapping them in a world of their own making. The seeds of destruction had been sown, and the harvest was about to begin. The arguments between Emily and Tom grew increasingly heated, escalating from bitter words to violent outbursts. One particularly stormy evening, after Tom lost a significant amount of money gambling, the tension reached a breaking point. Emily accused him of being a reckless fool, squandering what little money they had left. Tom, fueled by alcohol and rage, retaliated, accusing her of being a manipulative homewrecker who had ruined his life. "If it wasn't for you," he slurred, "I'd still be married to Sarah, with a good job and a respectable life." Emily's face contorted with fury. "And if it wasn't for you," she screamed back, "I wouldn't be a social pariah, working as a waitress to make ends meet." The argument spiraled out of control, with both of them hurling insults and accusations. Tom grabbed a glass from the table and threw it against the wall, shattering it into a million pieces. Emily retaliated by slapping him across the face. He shoved her against the wall, pinning her there with his weight. "I hate you," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "I wish I had never met you." Tom's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint in them. "Maybe," he hissed, "you'll get your wish." The fight ended with Emily locking herself in the bedroom, sobbing uncontrollably. Tom stumbled out of the apartment, seeking solace in the local bar. The air in the apartment was thick with resentment and despair, a palpable sense of impending doom hanging over everything. The stage was set for a tragedy. The years of secrets, lies, and betrayal were about to culminate in a shocking act of violence. The following morning, Emily was found dead in the apartment. Tom, passed out drunk on the living room floor, claimed he had no recollection of the night before. The scene was gruesome. Emily had been stabbed multiple times, the murder weapon a kitchen knife found lying next to her body. The small apartment was quickly swarming with police officers, forensic technicians, and curious neighbors. The yellow tape cordoned off the area, a stark reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded within those walls. Detectives questioned Tom, his story rambling and incoherent. He insisted he loved Emily, despite their arguments, and couldn't imagine harming her. However, the evidence told a different story. There were traces of Emily's blood on Tom's clothes, and his fingerprints were found on the murder weapon. The neighbors reported hearing a loud argument coming from the apartment the night before, followed by a period of silence. The police also discovered a life insurance policy that Tom had taken out on Emily just a few months prior, raising further suspicion. While circumstantial, the evidence painted a damning picture. Tom was arrested and charged with Emily's murder. The news of Emily's death sent shockwaves through Havenwood once again. The scandal had taken a dark and unexpected turn, culminating in a shocking act of violence. The town, already reeling from the betrayal and heartbreak, was now confronted with a murder investigation. The secrets and lies that had festered beneath the surface of their small community had finally erupted, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The nightmare had become a reality. The investigation into Emily's murder focused primarily on Tom, but detectives also couldn't ignore the possibility of other suspects, namely Sarah. Had her grief and anger driven her to seek revenge on her mother and ex-fiancé? Detectives interviewed Sarah, who expressed shock and sadness at Emily's death. She admitted to hating her mother for what she had done, but vehemently denied any involvement in her murder. She had an alibi for the night of the crime, having spent the evening with friends who corroborated her story. However, the detectives noted a coldness in Sarah's demeanor, a detachment that seemed unsettling. They couldn't shake the feeling that she was withholding something. They delved into Sarah's background, uncovering a history of emotional instability and a tendency towards impulsive behavior. Meanwhile, the investigation into Tom's finances revealed a desperate situation. He was heavily in debt, facing foreclosure on the apartment, and gambling away what little money they had. The life insurance policy on Emily seemed like a last-ditch attempt to salvage his life. The detectives also explored the possibility of a third party being involved. Had Emily made enemies in the community? Was there someone else who might have wanted her dead? They interviewed numerous residents of Havenwood, uncovering a web of secrets and resentments. The deeper they dug, the more complicated the case became. The murder of Emily was not just a crime of passion, but a culmination of years of lies, betrayal, and simmering anger. The truth, it seemed, was buried deep beneath the surface of Havenwood's seemingly idyllic facade. The investigators had a long and arduous road ahead of them. Just when the case seemed to be solidifying against Tom, a new piece of evidence surfaced, throwing the investigation into disarray. A neighbor came forward, claiming to have seen a mysterious figure lurking near Emily's apartment on the night of the murder. The neighbor couldn't identify the person, but described them as tall and slender, wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt. This new information cast doubt on Tom's guilt. Could someone else have been involved in Emily's murder? The detectives re-interviewed Sarah, pressing her about her alibi. She remained steadfast in her story, but the detectives couldn't shake their suspicions. They also discovered that Emily had been having a secret affair with another man in Havenwood, a local businessman named Robert. Robert had been providing Emily with financial support, and their relationship had been growing increasingly intense in recent months. When questioned, Robert admitted to the affair, but denied any involvement in Emily's murder. He claimed he had been out of town on a business trip the night of the crime, but his alibi couldn't be verified. The investigation took another twist when the police discovered that Tom had a gambling debt with a notorious local gangster. Had the gangster sent someone to collect the debt? And had things gone too far? The case was becoming increasingly complex, with multiple suspects and conflicting evidence. The detectives were faced with a tangled web of lies, secrets, and betrayals. The truth, it seemed, was elusive, hidden beneath layers of deceit. The pressure was mounting to solve the case and bring justice to Emily, but the path to the truth was proving to be far more treacherous than they had initially imagined. The town of Havenwood held its breath, waiting for the truth to be revealed. After weeks of painstaking investigation, the detectives believed they had finally pieced together the truth. They believed Tom, driven to desperation by his gambling debts and resentment towards Emily, had murdered her in a fit of rage. The life insurance policy was the final piece of the puzzle, a clear motive for his crime. However, just as they were preparing to formally charge Tom, a crucial piece of forensic evidence came back from the lab. The blood found on Tom's clothes was not Emily's. It was Sarah's. The detectives were stunned. How could Sarah's blood be on Tom's clothes? They re-interviewed Sarah, confronting her with the new evidence. Initially, she denied any involvement, claiming the blood must have been planted. But under intense questioning, her story began to unravel. She confessed that she had visited Emily's apartment the night of the murder, intending to confront her about the affair. An argument ensued. In the heat of the moment, Sarah had grabbed a knife and stabbed Emily. She claimed it was an accident, a moment of madness fueled by years of betrayal and heartbreak. Tom, she said, had arrived later, finding Emily dead. He had tried to clean up the scene, inadvertently getting Sarah's blood on his clothes. He had been protecting her, taking the blame for a crime she had committed. The detectives were faced with a difficult decision. Did they believe Sarah's story? Was Tom truly innocent, a victim of circumstance? The evidence was compelling, but there were still lingering doubts. The case had taken yet another unexpected turn leaving the detectives to grapple with a new and shocking reality. The truth, it seemed, was even more twisted and tragic than they had ever imagined. The town of Havenwood was about to be rocked by another revelation. Based on Sarah's confession and the forensic evidence, the detectives made the difficult decision to arrest her for the murder of her mother, Emily. The arrest was a somber affair, witnessed by a small crowd of onlookers who had gathered outside Sarah's apartment building. Sarah, her face pale and drawn, was led away in handcuffs, her eyes filled with a mixture of remorse and resignation. She didn't resist, offering no further explanation or protest. Tom, who had been released from custody, watched in stunned silence as Sarah was taken away. He looked lost and confused, caught in a web of circumstances beyond his control. The news of Sarah's arrest sent shockwaves through Havenwood. The town, already reeling from the scandal and the murder, was now confronted with the unimaginable. The daughter had killed her own mother. The evidence against Sarah was compelling. Her confession, while claiming the murder was accidental, provided a detailed account of the events leading up to Emily's death. The forensic evidence, including the blood on Tom's clothes and the murder weapon, corroborated her story. However, some in Havenwood refused to believe that Sarah was capable of such a heinous act. They remembered her as a kind and gentle soul, a victim of circumstance who had been driven to the edge by her mother's betrayal. Others, however, saw Sarah's confession as a calculated move, a way to escape the full consequences of her actions. They believed she had deliberately planned Emily's murder, motivated by revenge and a desire to reclaim her life. The truth, it seemed, remained elusive, shrouded in a veil of doubt and uncertainty. The town of Havenwood braced itself for the trial, a spectacle that promised to expose the darkest secrets and deepest resentments of their small community. The stage was set for a courtroom drama that would captivate and divide them all. The trial of Sarah captivated Havenwood. The small courtroom was packed each day, filled with curious onlookers, grieving family members, and reporters eager to document every detail of the sensational case. The prosecution painted Sarah as a cold and calculating killer, driven by revenge and a desire to reclaim her life. They presented evidence of her emotional instability, her history of impulsive behavior, and the damning confession she had given to the police. The defense argued that Sarah was a victim of circumstance, a woman pushed to the brink by her mother's betrayal. They claimed the stabbing was accidental, a tragic consequence of a heated argument fueled by years of emotional trauma. Tom took the stand, his testimony a mixture of guilt, remorse, and protectiveness towards Sarah. He confirmed her story, stating that he had arrived at the apartment after the stabbing and had tried to clean up the scene to protect her. The other man who had an affair with Emily, Robert, also testified. He spoke of his relationship with Emily and the support he gave her. The trial was an emotional roller coaster, with shocking revelations and dramatic confrontations. The courtroom became a stage for the airing of long-held secrets, simmering resentments, and the raw pain of betrayal. Sarah, throughout the trial, remained a figure of quiet sorrow. She rarely spoke, her eyes downcast, her demeanor a mixture of remorse and resignation. The weight of her actions and the gravity of her situation were evident in her every gesture. The jury listened intently to the evidence, their faces etched with concentration. The fate of Sarah and the future of Havenwood rested in their hands. The trial was nearing its end, and the town held its breath, waiting for the verdict that would finally bring closure to this tragic chapter in their history. The tension in the courtroom was palpable, a heavy weight that hung over everyone present. After days of deliberation, the jury reached a verdict. The courtroom fell silent as the foreperson read the words, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Sarah, guilty of manslaughter." A collective gasp swept through the room. Manslaughter, not murder. The jury had believed that Sarah had killed Emily, but they didn't believe it was premeditated. It was a crime of passion, a tragic accident fueled by years of betrayal and heartbreak. Sarah, her face pale and drawn, showed little emotion as the verdict was read. A single tear rolled down her cheek, but otherwise she remained composed. Tom, sitting in the gallery, buried his face in his hands, sobbing uncontrollably. The community of Havenwood reacted with a mixture of relief and disappointment. Some believed that Sarah had gotten away with murder, that she deserved to be punished more severely for taking her mother's life. Others felt that the verdict was just, that Sarah had suffered enough, that she had been a victim of circumstance. They hoped that she could find a way to rebuild her life and find peace after all the tragedy she had endured. Sarah was sentenced to 10 years in prison, a sentence that reflected the gravity of her crime and the mitigating circumstances that had led to it. As she was led away, she glanced at Tom, a flicker of gratitude in her eyes. The trial was over, but the scars it had left on Havenwood would remain for years to come. The secrets, lies, and betrayals that had been exposed during the trial had forever changed the fabric of their small community. The town would never be the same. The wedding day that had started it all, the day that promised a fairy tale ending, had instead become the beginning of a nightmare. The consequences of that day would continue to ripple through their lives, a constant reminder of the tragedy that had unfolded. Years passed. Sarah served her time, and upon her release, she left Havenwood, seeking a fresh start far away from the memories that haunted her. Tom remained in Havenwood, a broken man, forever burdened by guilt and regret. He never remarried, living a solitary existence, haunted by the what-ifs and could-have-beens. The tragedy of Sarah, Tom, and Emily serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of choices, of the destructive power of betrayal, and the enduring scars left by violence and loss. It's a story that explores the complexities of love, the fragility of trust, and the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of even the most seemingly idyllic communities. The choices made by Emily, Tom, and Sarah on that fateful wedding day set in motion a chain of events that led to heartbreak, scandal, and ultimately murder. It's a cautionary tale about the importance of honesty, the dangers of forbidden desires, and the enduring power of forgiveness. The town of Havenwood never fully recovered from the tragedy. The memories of Sarah, Tom, and Emily lingered, a constant reminder of the darkness that had consumed their small community. The wedding day, once a symbol of hope and happiness, became a symbol of loss and despair. But amidst the darkness, there is also a glimmer of hope. Sarah's story is also a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to overcome even the most devastating circumstances. It's a reminder that even in the wake of tragedy, it is possible to find healing, to rebuild one's life, and to find a path towards forgiveness and peace. It's a reminder that choices have consequences, and that even in the face of love and desire, honesty and integrity must prevail. The end.